am Kibibi Ajanku. I'm a Baltimore-based artist from the United States of America. And I'm here in Osogbo, Nigeria, working on my Indigo project. Many people know me as the founding mother of the Sankofa Dance Theater. We're an African dance company, so I'm known mostly as a dancer and as a performing artist, but I am also a visual artist with a long legacy of costume making, a long legacy of mask making, of sewing, of fiber arts. So my interest in indigo connects very strongly to all of those things. I wanted to investigate the traditions of indigo prior to the slave trade in America. And that brings me directly to Yorubaland. It brings me directly to Nigeria. It brings me directly to Osun Osogbo, because that is the place where indigo is rich. That is the place where the traditions of indigo are found still today. Now, not only in Osogbo, but also in Ogidi, you can come and you can see the process of indigo with the traditions of the cassava paste, with the traditions of the indigo fera and the balls of indigo, with the traditions of the cocoa pod using as ash to make alkaline water. Those things are still happening today. My first project has been the Adire Yoruba. That is the traditional Adire patterns using the cassava paste as dye resist. Now, this is a very, very, very historic process. It is a legacy process. It is a process that must be talked about, learned, and remembered. The cassava paste must be mixed by hand. It is mixed using blue alum and cassava flour. Those two things with just a little blue alum, about a teaspoon to about 2 cups approximately of cassava flour are mixed with water, and they're mixed and mixed and mixed with a little hot water at first, stirred and stirred, almost like you're making a porridge, almost like you're making a cereal. And then regular water is added, and it's added, and it's added till this thing becomes thick like flour. And then it must sit and it must rest. On the next day, more water is added until it is stretched and thinned, and it becomes a paste that you can paint with. The instruments used to apply this cassava paste are very precise. Chicken feathers of a very specific size, 3 to be exact. There's a thicker one, a smaller one, and then one that is right in the middle. One is called the left feather, the left wing feather. One is called the right wing feather, and that defines the size. Also, you need a broom straw as well as 1 small blade. Those are the instruments that are used to create the Adire pattern. The cloth must be 100% cotton. And the nice cloth that I used was a white brocade. And I used 5 yards of fabric to apply squares. I have been very interested in dyeing with the natural indigo plant. It grows tall like a weed, it grows vivacious like a weed, but it creates a magical blue color. And it is found here in West Africa. The indigo leaves are harvested, they are pounded, and they are wrapped in a ball. We are going to Elu plant. The Elu leaf is the indigo. It is Indigo fera, indigenous to West Africa. This plant is the one that gives us the gorgeous, beautiful blue, the deep, deep blue, like the midnight sky. It is this plant right here. It's during the rainy season now, and the plant is growing strong and it is growing tall. But during the dry season, the plant is very, very sparse. It's not available. And so during the rainy season, we want to collect the leaves, collect them and dry them. And what we want is the small, tender leaves, like this one. We want to take these leaves, collect them until we have so many, till we have many, many, many leaves. And then we put them in a mortar and we pound them until they're soft. We pound them until we see the blue color come through. We pound them until there is moisture, and you can take these leaves and form them and wrap them into a ball. You see the blue is coming. You see the blue? This is the final process. After we work the leaves, the elu, this is what it looks like when it's dry. This is the ball that will go into the indigo vat, along with the alkaline and water, to make the beautiful, beautiful blue. Those balls are then activated in the dye pot. For my particular Ileko piece, I use 30 dye balls, 30 balls of indigo. And I use a very good measure of cocoa pod ash. The cocoa pod is usually like the refuse from the farm. It is the part of the cocoa that no one eats. It is the part of the cocoa that no one uses, but it is perfect to make alkaline water. You take the cocoa pod and you burn it and you burn it and you burn it until it moves all the way down from a very large pile to very, very, very small flat pile of ashes. The ashes are then mixed with water and stirred and stirred and stirred and crushed and crushed and crushed till that water becomes just a black soot. That is what you will use as the alkaline water. I used half for my cassava paste dye resist and half of that for my Batik paraffin wax dye resist process, because I needed 2 pots. The 2 cannot mix together. Altogether, I use 50 balls, 50 round indigo balls. 30 for the large 5-yard piece and 20 for the smaller batik pieces, because that was a smaller process and had less yardage. So I am preparing 2 pots. I've prepared 2 dye vats, one with 30 balls of indigo and a little more than half of the alkaline water, another with 20 balls of indigo and a little less than half of the alkaline water. The balls needed to be stirred in, added, and broken apart by hand, mixed in with the water by hand. And then slowly more water was added so that it could begin, more alkaline water was added so that it could begin the process that would make the indigo dye. The alkaline water is very, very important because it is the thing that will help the indigo to ferment. The balls must be broken apart. They must be manipulated in this alkaline water. They must be open, they must be mashed, and they must be just really, really, really broken down in texture so that the alkaline water can mix in with the indigo leaves. And then they must be stirred and stirred and stirred. Now this makes a small quantity. Once you have a good mixture, a good strong mixture, you can add some regular water to build up the base and make sure that you have enough of a dye vat to cover your fabric. Once that happens, the stirring process begins. Several times a day, this stirring process is very important. A whirlpool has to be made. A strong, vigorous stirring to make a whirlpool. After some days, you'll find that each day there's a foam bloom in the middle. When that bloom is very, very, very rich, very, very substantial, very, very outstanding, then you know that your indigo vat is ready. This usually takes anywhere from 3 to 7 days. Another one of my projects while I was here has been the batik process. The batik is used just as you would use the cassava paste. It is a dye resist process, but this dye resist, instead of using cassava paste, a natural form, is using a paraffin wax. Here it is called candle. The candle is melted. It comes in one big square, very thin white block. That block is broken into pieces with a machete, placed in a small pot, and then melted on top of a small propane burner. The brush is made from a foam, a regular big foam. So one large foam piece must be cut into small squares, and the squares are really not that big. They are about 6 inches in length and about 2 inches across, 2 inches square. And then that square is carved down with a sharp scissor or a razor blade to a small point, almost like a pencil point. And that point is the thing that is used to dip into the hot melted wax and create a fine design, so that a precise line, a precise pattern, a precise design can be articulated on the fabric. And again, a white cotton fabric is a very nice thing to use.
So this is the hand-painted adire with cassava paste. Now we have to soak the hand-painted adire with cassava paste gently, and we are going to leave it for a few minutes. In case of putting the batik in the dye pot, that one can take a longer time. So this one must not stay longer in the dye, because it is cassava paste, it is indigenous adire, It's not like the one we use wax candle to do. We must not allow this one hand painted adire with cassava paste to stay more than 3-4 minutes in the dye. After 3-4 minutes, we will remove the cloth, dry it to allow the oxidation to occur on the dye pot, on the dye cloth. Then after drying, then we have to put it there again. Initially, it can give us something like gray, but later it will be turning to blue depending on the number of time that we drip it.
This is the adire done with the traditional cassava paste. It is much more delicate. We have to stretch the fabric so that each part of the fabric can reach the air. The air can hit every part of it. It can oxidize and become bluer and bluer and bluer with every moment that it takes until it dries. What we want to do is get rid of this cassava paste. So hanging the fabric up straight like this allows us to scrape it with a sharp knife, with a sharp straight edge. We scrape and scrape and scrape until there is no more cassava paste left. And you see the beautiful patterns coming through. You see where the paste has removed the blue, has not allowed the blue to come through. And as you scrape, you see the lighter colors coming through. Scraping and scraping. And you can see this paste just sloughing off, bit by bit. This is a process that takes time. It takes patience. It is a meditation. The old ways require a village. It's easier done with more than one person. It is about community working together, coming together, making beautiful things together. That's what this is about. Now, when it comes time to dye the fabric, that also is a process. It is a process that takes intention, because each time you dip the fabric into the dye vat, it is going to become a little richer. You dip the fabric in and it comes out green. At first a light green, and then when the air hits it, it begins to oxidize. At first it might be a very light blue or even a gray. And it makes sure that wherever the wax is touching, the dye will not penetrate. So the pattern and the design stays right there. The fermentation process, you can tell, is complete because of the bubbles on the side. Each time you dip the fabric in, you lift it up and it comes out with a green tone. And when the air begins to hit it, that green becomes blue. Now this process can go on until you get the rich color that you want. Sometimes anywhere up to 14 dips, 14 passes through the dye vat until you get a deep, dark, almost blue-black indigo. Magic. So today is the day that the wax comes off of the batik. It is the de-waxing process, and it happens with hot water, boiling water, a next cooler vat, and then a final vat to wash the wax out. This is 2.5 yards of white cotton baisan fabric that has been dyed with traditional indigo. So in order for the wax to come off, the hot water will melt the wax. This fabric must be submerged in the hot water. This fabric must be stirred and moved in the hot water. So now I remove this from the hot water and move it. The final wax can be scrubbed, and we want to get all of the wax. We want to make sure there's no wax on the fabric. The hot water has loosened it, and this cold water will finish the process. And you can see the beautiful batik design come through. So you see the visible wax residue. This is the wax that is remaining on the cloth that is now coming off. This wax will be collected and reused. And it can be reused. And this wax, the residue, can be reused. This is the wax that is floating on the top of the water after it's been removed from the cloth. Now the cloth, and then it goes into one more vat for a final rinse of clear water, plain water, for a final rinse. So now all this needs to do is dry. And you see the beautiful patterns. You see the mirror, you see the flower, you see the talking drum.
Go.
These are my projects. It has been my honor and my joy and my treasure and everything that is making me happy to have this time in Oshogbo, in the Osun state of Oshogbo, Nigeria, at the Nikkei Art Center, to work on these projects that you see around me. To this side, you see the Adire Eleke project. It is traditional indigo dye using a traditional and age-old cassava paste as a dye resist process to create these patterns and these designs. The Adire designs tell a story. Each and every box is an iteration, an outbirth of 32 original designs. So here you have the talking drum, you have the mirror, you have a flower, you have many designs right here on this piece. And it was all done in the way that our grandmothers and our grandmothers' grandmothers have practiced indigo technique, Yoruba indigo, for hundreds of years. On this side, what you see is the still traditional indigo dye, using the hard and dried indigo leaves. So, Adire patterns with batik, and that batik is candle wax. Contemporary African art with batik, again using wax. And on this side, traditional indigo dyed over using cassava paste. It is still steeped in the beauty that means that makes this Yoruba indigo worth saving, worth talking about, worth passing on. And that is why even after hundreds of years, this process still remains beautiful, it still remains important, and it still remains a legacy that we must know, understand, and pass on.
The Oshogbo history, like they say, is very paramount to the Yoruba. Yes.
It certainly.
Indigo, the Oshogbo, they normally call this town Oshogbo Iluaro. This particular city is called the town of Indigo.
Ah.
It's very important in the whole of Yorubaland.
Ah.
This is the state that has the Ile-Ife, where the paramount ruler of the Yoruba land stays. So, I want to say congratulations to you for your project, and I also wish you success in your project.
And I want to say thank you to you. Ayo Adegideon, you have been a savior. You have documented this process for me. You have just come on as not only the videographer, but as the editor, as the director, as all things to make sure that this story is saved as part of the legacy of this process, and also to make sure that this story is told and can live on beyond me, beyond you, and can live on.
Thank you so much, too.
Thank you. Just 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
So, Mommy Nika, can you please give us one little round of applause?
I want to just thank you. I don't have anything to say more than how we can move Oshogbo and our state forward. And your guys here. And I'm happy.